place in town we're got it on the market. We're moving south of town.
Out yonder somewhere. That's nice. You got some acres out?
Gotta get that in town sometime.
That one over there. What's that on
Thompson.
Right here for public comment?
Yeah.
Okay. Just sign for public comment. I'll need you to fill out one of these.
I don't need to speak.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're just here to watch?
Yeah.
Okay. You can take an agenda.
We need to get golf balls out there.
Field day diamond range.
Good.
Got plenty, please.
This holler at you.
Yeah, I know. I will.
Process.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's like a little bit rise. Yeah. So what's your shift? Oh,
Yes. Out there. Training. Yeah.
my shift is like 2.
That you did. That you did. There you go. Yeah, that's right.
They back to my office. They did an ID button on my office now, and y'all are able to get it anytime. So if you ever do need it,
But when you say language,
Megan. Also got a mini fridge. That's
do.
pretty nice.
I do. I keep books and waters.
Hello.
I start putting copies in it.
Okay.
For those marathon.
miniature.
Well, I'll probably send
I
it
lost
to
it.
So you mentioned this guy.
Well, let's slide this time.
When you update it or
We are live. We're good.
All right. I have 4:39. This time we will call the meeting of the Kansas City Commission to order. And with that, Commissioner Potter, would you listen?
Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be here to represent our constituents. Lord, just help us make wise decisions and ones that are a great benefit to our city. And we ask that in Christ's name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. That takes us to the approval of the minutes of the special meeting of August 12, 2025. Have a motion second to approve the minutes as written. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Takes us to item number 5, public comments from interested citizens.
I do not have anyone who has signed in for public comment.
Okay. Item number 6, conduct public hearing and consider and take appropriate action on ordinance number 1240, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Canyon, Texas, fixing the ad valorem tax rate and providing for the levying of ad valorem taxes for the use and support of the municipal government of the City of Canyon, Texas, for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2025, and ending September 30th, 2026, at the rate of 0.51181 per $100, and for directing the assessment thereof, providing for a date on which such taxes become due and delinquent together with penalties and interest thereon, providing for repealing, savings, and severability clauses, providing for an effective date of this ordinance, and providing for the publication of the caption hereof. Bo, you and Joe leading the charge again?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay.
After last week's public hearing and the adoption of the 2025-2026 fiscal year budget, this evening we will be holding a public hearing for the 2025 tax year property tax rate with proposed adoption. The proposed property tax rate is 0.5181 per $100 valuation, which is a 25% increase from the prior year and a 30% increase from the 2025 no new revenue rate. Thus, the state defines this as a 30% increase. The no new revenue rate being the tax rate that would produce the same amount of property tax revenue in 2025 as was produced in 2024 if applied to the same properties from 2024 with updated values. And we want to take a closer look at these property tax calculations. The first report provides a summary of the changes to budgeted property tax revenue and the tax rate calculations. I'm going to hand things over to Joel to review this information.
Most of this I shared with you last week, and it still pertains specifically to the tax rate because that's a significant portion of the general fund revenue that was included in the budget that the commission approved last time. This tax rate will provide for $4.8 million of tax revenue that will fund the general fund operations. $4,794,000 of that being for operations, and about $60,000 of that is funding to the TERS funding based on valuation increases. So this amount of property taxes, this provides about 30% of the total funding for the city's general fund, and the total being $15.9 million. So this is 30% of that $15.9 million. Of course, the most significant portion of the increase in this tax is due to the change in the debt service rate, the INS rate. That increase is the total of that tax is $1,491,000. And this is the tax revenue that's required to service the debt payments that will come due on the city's outstanding general obligation bonds during fiscal year 2025 and 2026. The total result of the property tax rate that's being proposed will be property tax revenue of $6,346,000, which is included in the approved budget for fiscal year 2025-2026. The amount of property tax revenue is $1,413,000 more than the property tax revenue for 2024-25. And of that 1,413,000, 1,087,000, or about 77% of that increase, is associated with servicing the city's general obligation bonds. In the state of Texas, by law, the required interest and repayment of principal, also known as debt service, is provided for by a city's property tax revenue. Taxing entities within the state of Texas obtain tax revenue needed to service required debt payments by assessing an interest and sinking tax rate. This rate is calculated based on the required debt service payments that will be due next year. That's scheduled. We'll pay those on February 15th and August 15th. And the reason that the INS portion of the tax rate is increasing for 25-26 is due primarily to the recent issuance of the Series 2025 General Obligation Bonds to provide for public safety facility modifications and expansion. And like I say, I gave this last week, but I'm also going to do it again this evening. Just go through a recap of the events that bring us to this point of needing to increase the property taxes by such a significant amount. The city's been assessing the needs for facility improvements related to police and fire, also known as public safety, for a number of years, actually since 2015. During this time, the city has grown, a trend that's expected to continue in the near future, as the city has recently invested significantly in infrastructure expansion to provide for future growth. There's potential for approximately as many as 1,900 lots available for the construction of new homes in the northern part of the city. Additionally, during this past decade, the nature of the city's firefighting personnel has gradually transformed from being a predominantly volunteer to being majority full-time paid employees. In fiscal year 2021, the city's ISO rate study, that stands for Insurance Service Office, resulted in a downgraded rate, ISO rating. The ISO rating is a rating that's provided, it's done for insurance companies. It's a standardized way of rating the risk for a specific community based on that community's abilities to respond to emergencies, fire calls. The ISO rating impacts the insurance premiums set by insurance companies on their customers, homeowners, businesses. One of the causes cited for that downgrade in the ISO was the city's lack of a full-time 24-hour on-site firefighter staff, which directly impacts the response time to a fire call. So in the spring of 2022, the City Commission responded to all of these circumstances: the growth, the change in the nature of the fire department staff, and anticipated future growth. And at that time, the commission committed to hiring additional full-time firefighters and also approved the hiring of an architect to study the city's current facility and obtain for the city a number of options with related opinions of probability of cost for consideration as to how to best meet these facility needs that would come about as a result of increasing the number of firefighters and changing the nature of that firefighting staff. In May of 2024, the commission heard from the architect and voted unanimously to select one of four options for facility improvements and additions to meet the needs of the city's police and fire departments. The option selected by the commission at that time was labeled Facility Plan A, and it had a projected cost of $14 million. On September 19th of 2024, the city began informing the citizens of Canyon about the plans for modifying and expanding public safety facilities during the State of City lunch event. That was held again on September 19th of 2024. Then in December 2024, the City Commission had a work session to hear more information about the improvements and the city's need to issue bonds and the necessity for that in order to fund these facility modifications for public safety. And it was abundantly clear that the city would need to borrow this money. It was too significant for us to bear just in the ordinary course of business. So in the state of Texas, Texas cities can borrow money for needs such as public safety facilities by issuing or selling general obligation bonds, and the proceeds of that selling of bonds can then be used for the construction costs. So in order to issue general obligation bonds in the state of Texas, the law requires the Texas city to hold a general election in order to obtain approval from the citizens of that city to issue general obligation bonds. So on February 4th of 2025, the City Commission voted unanimously to hold a bond election on May 3rd, asking voters who are citizens of the City of Canyon to approve the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $14 million in order to provide the funding needed for the public safety facility modifications and expansion. During the months from February through April of 2025, the City of Canyon provided multiple communications to citizens communicating the city's plans to begin public safety facility modifications and expansion, the estimated cost associated with making these facility modifications and expansions, $14 million, the need to issue debt, actually borrow money to pay for these construction costs, and the projected tax increase to the average Canyon resident that would be needed to repay this debt. And also was communicated the opportunity for citizens of the city to approve or disapprove the issuance of the debt by means of the bond election. Communications were made to Canyon citizens by direct mail, postcards, utility bill inserts, social media informational posts, informational videos that were posted on the city's website, on YouTube, addresses to various civic clubs and organizations within the City of Canyon. Open houses were held at both the fire department and police department, at which citizens were invited to come see firsthand the needs that the public safety departments are needing and to ask questions. And then the bond election was held on May 3rd of 2025. The majority of those who voted in the election approved the issuance of the general obligation bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $14 million. On August 5th, Hilltop Securities, the city's financial advisor for the issuance of general obligation bonds, obtained 3 bids for the sale of the city's Series 2025 general obligation bond debt. The highest price offered resulted in a bond par or principal amount of $13,805,000, which was actually a little less than the $14 million that was approved by the city's voters. The pricing that was given in that bid provided for $14 million of net proceeds after the effect of the premium and the issuance costs that had to be paid. And so that $14 million will be available when it's funded here in a couple of weeks for use on these public safety facility construction costs. The City Commission then voted unanimously during that August 5th meeting to adopt an ordinance approving the issuance of the sale of these general obligation bonds to the winning bidder in a principal amount not to exceed $14 million. So based on the bid results and the action taken by the City Commission, the City of Canyon now sold general obligation bonds in the amount of $13,805,000. So in short, the city has borrowed this money and therefore the debt must be repaid. And the repayment schedule for the approved debt that has been issued requires the city to pay approximately $1,060,000 each year on this particular debt over the next 20 years. The first payments will begin again, as I said before, February 15th and August 15th of 2026, which is the year that this tax rate is being considered for this evening. So, as the city staff have gone through this process of trying to project what the impact would be on citizens and what was communicated to citizens leading up to that bond election, we had projected that the resulting tax rate increase that would be needed for the INS or the debt service portion of the tax rate would be approximately 8.785 cents per $100 of taxable value. After the certified tax values were received and the results of the issuance of the voter-approved general obligation bonds have come to be known, and the resulting tax rates have been calculated in accordance with the state law that Bo's going to discuss here shortly, the actual increase in the tax rate needed came up to be 0.08765 per 100 value. So this is the increase in the INS tax rate. That's slightly less than what we had been projecting and communicating to citizens leading up to the May bond election. In the way of dollar amount, what was communicated, we gave in those information cards that were sent out and on the website, we gave what the impact of this rate would be on an average home value of $274,933, which was the average homestead value that Brad had provided us preliminarily for this year. We had projected that the property tax increase needed for the INS rate would be $242 annually. So after we have gotten all the numbers and we've actually done the calculation for the tax rate that's being proposed this evening, the result of the actual tax rate for INS rate on a $274,933 home is actually $241 annually. So we were just $1 off of that, and not by any of our well doing. We just had good facts, and we were able to come close on what we were projecting. So very close to what was communicated to voters prior to the election. So in addition to the budgeted increase for property tax revenue that's necessary for servicing the debt, there's also an increase in the part of the property tax rate that is for operations of approximately $299,976. And this is the M&O part, or the maintenance and operation part of the tax rate. And there are primary factors that are contributing to that part of the property tax increase were first provided to the commission by email on June 26th. We've discussed these factors through each of the previous budget work sessions of the commission, and these were also presented last week during the presentation of the proposed budget during the commission's special meeting last week. And Bo's going to discuss those items again here shortly. So in the way of just a short explanation, why is taxes going up so much? It's to service this debt. That's the short answer. So appreciate your time. Bo's going to now talk about how we calculate the tax rate and a little more specifically about the M&O increases.
And before we jump into that, I want to kind of give a reminder of what that $14 million in debt was for. So we have $4.5 million in renovation of the police station, $400,000 for the construction of a new animal control shelter, $600,000 for renovations of the fire department command staff offices, $4.2 million for remodel of Fire Station 1, $1.7 million for the new fire department training classroom and equipment base, $600,000 for fire training burn house, $750,000 for annex additions for the fire department's physical training space, $1 million to replace the main fire engine, and $250,000 for renovations to the former police station. Now, if we look deeper into these calculations for the revenue, that's what this next report is for. This is how we generate the revenue amounts based off of the tax rate calculations. So first, when we take into consideration things like the tax limit and tax freeze adjustments to property values, we wanted to come up with a more realistic tax property value to use to apply our tax rates to generate a more accurate revenue projection. So we took the 2025 total taxable value, which started at $1.367 million, an adjustment based off of current year's actual collections. We brought that down to $1.247 million. So when looking at the revenue amounts, this is the property values that we are using. Now for tax rates calculations, we have the current tax rate, M&O of 0.37635, debt service of 0.03376, for a total tax rate of 0.41011. And when we look at the 2025, these different calculations, I want to first point out that the debt service rate for all of these scenarios is the same. This comes from Randall County's certified tax rate calculation. This is the set amount to fulfill our voter-approved debt service. So what can be changed is this operations amount, but this debt service amount is set based off of what voters have approved. So the first calculation is the no new revenue rate, which we mentioned brings in the same amount of revenue as the prior year using the same property and their updated values. So the total tax rate for that is 0.39420. This is saying that all the new debt requirements, we're going to take all that out of operation. So we would need to cut over $1 million from our operating budget in order to accommodate this tax rate. Then there is what's called the voter approval tax rate. That's a 3.5% increase to the no new revenue M&O rate. That gives us a total rate of 0.49665, which would provide an increase in operations of $113,780. Now for large cities, that's all the calculations that they have to do for their state requirements. Because our population is below 30,000, we have two additional calculations. So the next one doesn't really have a name, but is defined in section 75065 of the Texas Tax Code. This is the highest rate that can be adopted that cannot be petitioned for an election. That has a total tax rate of 0.51772, giving us an increase in operating revenue of $372,564. And then there is the de minimis rate. This is the highest rate that can be adopted that would not automatically trigger an election. That highest tax rate is 0.52873, which would give us just over $500,000 in an increase in operating revenue. Now, this next one is just a hypothetical. What if we took the M&O rate, 0.37635, and applied the new 2025 debt service rate? That'd be a total of 0.49776, which would give us an increase in operating revenue of $127,413. But the proposed rate has an M&O rate of 0.39040, that same debt service of 0.12141, for a total of 0.51181, giving us just under $300,000 in increased operating revenue. This was the limit that we set for ourselves when we started the budget process. Last year's increase was about $300,000. We did not want to go above that because we knew that the INS, that debt service rate, was going to go high. We wanted to be conservative again on the operations side. This rate does not require an additional election in addition to the May 2025 election, which we've already held, and it cannot be petitioned for an election according to the state tax code. Then here below, we have the actual math showing how we came up with those revenue amounts using that taxable property value at the top and applying those different tax rates with all the different values. So that's how we came up with this operating revenue column here, which we've already gone over. Let's look at the history of these different tax rates. So first, this bottom black and blue line here, that's the history of our no new revenue tax rate. Again, same amount of property tax revenue from the prior year using new property values for the same property. Then in red, we have the unadjusted voter approval tax rate. That's this one all the way up here. Then when applied for sales tax, that drops down to this dark green line here. That is the adjusted voter approval tax rate. Then in orange, we have the de minimis rate. Again, this is the highest rate before an election is automatically triggered. And then our prior year adopted and the current year proposed in the light blue. So this year's proposed is below the de minimis rate and above that adjusted voter approval rate. Now, history of property values. This year, market value increased by only 2%. That's the smallest percent of increase we've had since 2016. Taxable values increased by 5%. That's below average. The tax limit and tax freeze adjustments to property values actually decreased, which is very rare to see.
I might add here that this tax increase would have no effect on anyone that already has the limitation for the above 65 senior tax freeze.
So if you got senior tax free, everything we've just discussed doesn't affect you.
Doesn't apply.
That is correct.
You're paying the same tax that you paid in the year that you turned 65.
That would include the bond election.
Yes, it does. Then the adjusted taxable value this year, $1,122,000,000, 7% increase, also just below the average of 8%. So you can see the trends there, how this recent year has been compared to prior years. So orange is market value, blue is unadjusted taxable value, and then the red is the taxable value adjusted for freeze adjustments. Now for the average home, we're using the residence homestead value provided by PRAD. So current year, $275,580, that's a less than 1% increase. For taxable value, $267,118, that's a 3% increase. Then we start applying the proposed tax rate. So the payment for an average residence homestead, $1,367, which is an increase of $304 annually. If we just break that up into the operating side, that's a total of $1,043, or an increase of $67. But for the debt service, it's an increase from $88 to $324. That's a $236 increase for the year. In the chart here, you can see the green being the payment portion for operations and orange being for voter-approved debt service. Then our next report is comparing this proposed tax rate with other cities, and also comparing tax levies and tax levy per capita. So what we have available is the 2024 levy amounts and per capita amounts. So we can kind of compare right now where Canyon compares to other cities with the 2024 tax rate. So right now that levy is just over $5.3 million for Canyon, which falls below Pampa, but above Dumas. So it's kind of in the middle of these other 6 panhandle cities. When compared to Texas cities with similar populations, so 3 above, 3 below, it's actually the 3rd lowest, so about the middle there for total levy. But 6 cities with similar total taxable value, it's actually the 2nd lowest, with only Sealy being below Canyon there. But if you look at the per capita amount of $332 per capita, Canyon again was just below Pampa. It is also again the 2nd lowest compared with cities with similar population, and it is actually the lowest per capita with these other Texas cities with similar taxable values. Now, if we go back to that first page, the total levy that we have for the 2025 tax year is $6,346,000. So if we compare that number to the 2024 levies, again, they're going to change based off of what these cities adopt for 2025. We only have the prior year to compare to. So using that number of $6,346,000, we are then above Pampa, but below Plainview and below Amarillo for total levy. We are still below Sulphur Springs, still third lowest with the same compared city, still in that same range. We move just above Mount Pleasant here with the new one.
But if they make any movement, Bo, that changes all of that.
That changes. Their property valuations and their adopted tax rate, they ultimately will change all these numbers.
But you're using our
We're using
proposed.
to their last year's levies. That is correct. And then comparing that levy to these six with similar property values, again, second lowest, only being above Sealy here. That per capita amount would be $388. So that would only be below Plainview with these six cities. For a similar population, that $388 would, again, third lowest being above Mount Pleasant, but below Sulphur Springs. And then per capita is still, that $388 is lower than these other similar cities with taxable values. Then looking at all these different cities, comparing their dark blue is their 2024 adopted tax rate, orange their proposed tax rate for the 2025 year, and you can see where Canyon has been falling there. Not every city had posted their proposed tax rate by the time it came for us to submit this report. So this is based off of what information was available. I know Amarillo has a proposed increase. Mount Pleasant has a proposed increase. Sealy does have their increase. Humboldt is actually staying flat. Several of these cities here are a small decrease. And Plainview and Pampa also a decrease. Now, when we look at property tax revenue and its impact on the adopted budget, this is the summary of next year's adopted budget. So you can see a 3% increase in revenue. When looking at just the general fund, it's a 4% increase in revenue. We're looking at general fund because that's where property tax revenue is collected and used. So a 4% increase in revenue, which is about $543,000. Personnel overall for the city is 7% increase in budgeted expenses. For general fund, it's a 6%. We're going to look at that a little bit more closely here in just a little bit. But there is a decrease in budgeted supplies, budgeted contractual services, capital outlay, and transfers to CIP. So that's where budget cuts were made in those four expense categories. And then this transfer to other funds, that's what amount that we collect for the tiers fund being transferred actually to the tiers fund to be used in that district. We'll look at new additions that are included in the adopted budget. I'm going to be looking at, again, just these general fund additions totaling $844,000. First, we have the 3 firefighters that were hired in this current year, but only for 6 months. So this $104,000 is the cost to have them on staff for the full year. These positions were half of the 6 total firefighter positions that were added since 2023 to facilitate the 24-hour paid emergency response team. This was done to improve the fire department's insurance service office or ISO rating, which helps insurance companies determine fire insurance premiums. Then there is the $10,000 increase to the fire department's overtime. In recent years, this line item has ran about $10,000 to $20,000 over budget, so the budget amount is being increased to better match actual spending. Then there is the addition of the part-time EMS FRO coordinator position, which would allow the fire department to continue to perform certain EMS actions before an ambulance arrives on scene. Then finally, for the fire department, there is the city's portion or the grant match for 3 additional firefighter positions. If the city is not awarded this grant, this money would be used as contingency for the year. Then looking at the police department, this budget does include the first of the 3-year transition of the police department to a step pay schedule. Purpose of this transition is to address the city's high attrition rate and low recruitment in the police department by reducing the pay gap with other local entities. This scale is the result of almost 2 years of research performed by the police department, human resources, and executive staff as they review the pay scales of other police departments. Within this schedule, next year, officers will be paid about 77.5% of Amarillo's current pay scale. Corporals will be at 76.5%. Sergeants will be at 77%, and lieutenants will remain at 80%. By the end of the 3-year transition, Canyon Police Department uniform positions are expected to all be paid at 80% of Amarillo's current pay scale. And the schedule does also include a CPI adjustment each year that would increase the scale as well. The purpose of this adjustment is to keep Canyon from falling behind future increases to Amarillo's pay scale. This $117,000 increase that's reflected is in addition to the typical 3% merit increase that they have received in the past. And so you'll see that 3% merit increase included later on. Then there is the addition of the 2 school resource officers or SRO officers. This cost is reflected net of the amount the city will receive from Canyon ISD for these officers. These are the final 2 school resource officers the school district needs from the city to fulfill the state mandate to have at least 1 armed security officer at each school during regular school hours. Then there is the $15,000 increase to the police department's overtime, which has historically been over budget, much like the fire department. For all general fund staff, there's the 3% merit increase with the cost of just over $282,000. There's a $60,000 for an assistant city attorney, $12,288 for software to help the city respond to open records requests, $54,000 for time clocks and time management software to help keep track changes to the police and fire department shift schedules that current software is unable to track. After this initial setup, equipment costs, this will have an annual cost of about $7,000 moving forward. Then there is $5,069 for contingency for the general fund and a $37,050 for the first payment of a new $322,000 trash truck to be purchased from the city's capital equipment fund. Overall, the general fund budget includes these just over $844,000 new costs that will be covered by the increased revenue of $543,000, which means staff had to cut about $300,000 in expenses to accommodate these increases. At this time, if you have any questions or comments, we welcome them. Otherwise, staff recommends the City Commission conduct a public hearing for the proposed tax rate for the fiscal year 2025-2026 to allow for public comment. And staff recommends the adoption of Ordinance 1240, setting the ad valorem tax rate for the 2025 tax year.
Any additional questions, or Bo or Joel, or discussion? Well, with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't believe we have anybody that signed in who wants to speak. Is that right? With that, we will close the public hearing and would entertain a motion.
To approve the proposed 2025 maintenance and operations tax rate of 0.39040.
Yes. They have to be separate.
Have a motion and second on approval of the maintenance and operations tax rate of 0.39040. This is a record vote. Commissioner Kramer?
Only the third motion is a record vote.
On the combined INS and MDOT?
Yes.
Okay.
The first two are regular votes, per my notes from Gretchen.
Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Entertain a motion on the INS tax rate.
Move to approve the proposed 2025 interest and sinking tax rate of 0.12141.
A motion and a second to approve the proposed 2025 INS tax rate. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. We need a third motion here, it looks like. So,
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.51181, which is effectively a 30% increase in the tax rate through the adoption of ordinance number 1240.
Second.
we have a motion and a second for the adoption of a tax rate of 0.51181. It is a record vote. Commissioner Kramer? Mayor votes yes. Commissioner Lyon?
No.
Commissioner Potter?
Yes.
The motion passes 3-1. All right. Again, thank you. I think the presentation was very thorough, so Bo, Joe, thank you all and appreciate the work that's gone into this. Thank you. All right, with that, we will go to item number 7. Consider and take appropriate action of recommendations to enter a consulting services agreement associated with the 2025 voter approved bond election with McJack Solutions LLC. John.
I placed the contract in front of you. The one that was in your agenda was modified slightly. The changes that were made on that were on number 6 concerning the insurance and indemnification, and also the length of the contract. It will be for 18 months. And also under the insurance, we will require insurance and we will reimburse McJack for that insurance. You can see the compensation there is $2,700 a month, 18 months at $50,000. And that will be Mike Wurtis will be performing those services for us, getting started with us. We've already met a couple of times off the payroll to get things rolling. And once we sign this with him, then he'll be right there with us and attending all the meetings and helping us to save money where we can and looking for cost alternatives. And then also just being our stand-in when Joe or I can't make a meeting, then Mike will be there to fill in for us and fill that role.
I move that we authorize City Manager Joe Price to enter into the consulting service agreement associated with the 2025 Emergency Service Bond Project with Mike Wurtis of McJack Solutions LLC.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the contract. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, next we have downtown project updates. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I printed out quite a few sheets in front of everybody. I think most of this was in the agenda packet except for the spreadsheet. A lot of this has been pulled from the downtown master plan. I was able to go sit down with the Canyon EDC board recently with Lucas to try to highlight kind of where we're at on some of these projects. Commission's been following along some. I felt it was time to come back for an update. So staff is working on trying to implement some of the downtown projects. We have been lucky. Mr. Enriquez and Mr. Deviney and I, as well as Lucas and Mr. Burns, have been working on trying to secure outside funding to do that. I think one of the biggest challenge coming in is, we wanted to really improve that gateway to the downtown area and start from the outside and work our way down to the downtown square. And so we started on 15th as we looked at the plan in here, and y'all can kind of see that in this image right here of what that should look like on the second page. So in those discussions with Chris, Enriquez, and Lucas, when we were down deep in it, we had several work sessions with staff trying to problem solve and trying to figure out where to go. The MPO, which we are a member of, has certain surface transportation grants, block grants, and so we pitched our hat into there. It's a 80-20, Chris. So 80% grant, 20% match from the local entity. We have the option to have TxDOT adhere to the construction of those projects. We would design, and then they would help us basically bid out and construct. The biggest one we thought going into this, we separated 15th into two projects, Commission, as I've mentioned in the past, and I've detailed those costs here. We got lucky. TxDOT does have a consultant on staff right now that did help us develop cost. One of the biggest challenges we talked a lot internally on the two phasing of 15th Street is the railroad crossing. I'm sure, like you guys, I've heard from it countless times of crossing over, the issues of that. So phase one of 15th would incorporate a complete rebuild of the crossing. And so we would work with BNSF, Tim Hoya out of the Fort Worth office. He does the public affairs side of this. So that was a pretty costly effort. It's probably $600,000 to $700,000 for that piece alone. In addition, we would also put enhanced improvements for pedestrians crossing. I'm seeing people cross every day, as I'm sure you are. It's not the greatest place to cross with a bicycle or walking. And so that would also be incorporated. Right now, Chris and I and Tanner have been working with TxDOT to get this project going. While this project is phased for 2027, they will allow us to begin that project now because we expect at least 24 months of red tape with BNSF and trying to get that crossing done. We know when we get with BNSF on this, they'll have to use their crew to build it. And so we're going to work on that. So right now, I've already approved the agreement with Chuck. I'm reviewing the resolution to accompany it, and then once I get it looked at with Chuck, I'll send it down to TxDOT Austin to review that resolution to bring that to commission. So that project is almost on our doorstep. Once that's approved, that allows staff to go ahead and start on all the preliminary work, try to start working with BNSF and doing all that, bless you, start doing all that work. We expect that to be very cumbersome and time consuming. Being that this is a grant, we will have to procure an engineer. We won't be able to use our city engineer. He will be able to bid on that project, but we will have to procure an engineer. So that's a 90-day process in and of itself. So we'll have to start and go through all those steps. So that project is pretty much here. We're hoping we can start construction maybe in 27 would be ideal. But you can see right now the grant that we have secured. And so if it's got this highlight here, those projects are secured projects. And so what does that mean? Those projects cannot be defunded by the NPO organization. So those projects are all locked. And so they have committed $2.25 million in federal monies to this project. We have to raise $545,000. And so we'll talk about that here in a second. We've also got phase two locked in too. If you see right there, there's part of phase two. More than likely, we will go ahead and do new stamped concrete on there. All of that is not brick. The only brick section is right there by Paul Blake's building. And so we would do new construction with concrete stamped, stained concrete there and improve those intersections. That project is very similar in cost at $2.716 million. And the grant on that is 2.17, with our match being almost the exact same at 540. So those are been our cost estimates so far. Just to remind you, the other projects on this list, 8th Street is already locked in. We have worked with Canyon ISD. That project is on the move. We're nearly at 90% Adolfo plans, so 95%. We're almost at full plans, and so one is we're paying the engineer directly, so we didn't have to procure. So we're eating on the engineering cost. CISD is helping participate 50-50 in the grant match on that, and so we are going to help redo the sidewalks from the junior high to the intermediate. So it's 3 blocks, you guys, 3.5.
Closer to 5.
Closer to 5. So we're gonna really try to make some serious improvements there for multimodal sidewalk, large sidewalks, to try to make it all the way from one school to the other. Before we put this project in play and several others that are on this list, we had a long conversations with our school administration, telling them, hey, we want to improve these sidewalks. We want to improve pedestrian space safety, especially for our school children. And so that was one of the big discussions with them. That one is almost done. We're hoping that can be bid out with TxDOT's project. TxDOT has a project that they're trying to construct from the Justice Center to the new lumberyard. They are going to try to build sidewalks from the Justice Center to the lumberyard. That is a very high cost project. It's actually double what we've got there, if not more, because they have to eat into that side. I don't know if they're going to make it in design, so we're ahead of them on that project. Our goal would be those projects get bid out together, and then we can have one contractor to do both. I think a better bang for our buck.
And that's fully a TxDOT project. We're not funding that.
We will work. Yeah, we are funding just the match. TxDOT will administer the construction, and so they'll administer all of that on our behalf. So the other one's 9th Avenue. That one was, we were kind of surprised that got locked in. That goes all the way from the junior high down to almost to Reevesinger. And so that project would improve sidewalks all the way down. That project is also locked. It's about $1.14 million on that. We've also asked the school district to participate 50-50 on that. We will be getting with CISD soon. Once Adolfo and our public works guys finish the final plans on 8th, we're going to sit down with CISD administration to go over that and let them comment, have any comments. So just wanted to show you some of the phasing here, what we've got. We're trying to push these right along. I do have the tiers balance, and I've asked the CEDC to hopefully contribute to some of these projects. And I've asked for $50,000 a year on their side, and I've also got some of our street funds. Right now, we're saving about $200,000 a year in street maintenance for construction. We've been doing that for Brown Road. We have saved some of that money for Brown Road. We're waiting to discuss that with the county. We'll put another $200,000 to these projects next budget to continue that path. One of the big ones that we have brought to the center, and one of the ones we've probably debated significantly, trying to redo 4th Avenue on the square. And so one of the greatest challenges with redoing the square and getting to that point is the drainage infrastructure or lack thereof, especially being in TxDOT's right-of-way on top of it. So dealing with the state, having not enough drainage infrastructure, we have actually proposed to do 4th Avenue as a joint State of Texas, joint City of Canyon project. And so this would be potentially the construction of 3 blocks in concrete all the way, the middle block and the 2 side blocks, east and west. We have discussed that with TxDOT. They have not committed to that project yet. We're hoping to continue to have dialogue. That project, as you can tell, is not locked in, but it's very much on our radar. So we've just kind of worked our way down in those projects. But overall, we've acquired over $5 million in grant funds to do some of these downtown projects. Obviously, we have to put some of our money to help with that, but significantly, we've been able to acquire quite a few dollars to do that. We are trying to look at a public restroom. We had walked around, Mr. Burns and I walked around with our architect who's helping us on public safety bond. We still feel one of the best corners is right, that's prescribed in here. There is a possibility of teaming up with the Chamber of Commerce on this because they act in a visitor's arm. They do have a visitor's arm that receives hotel motel funding. We're still working through that. It could be an allowable expense on motel tax if we were able to connect it with them because they kind of operate as our city visitor center for our tourists coming into town. Chuck has rendered an opinion on that. I've asked for that opinion. Ultimately, there's not a lot of case law on that topic in depth for us to render an opinion, but I feel that he's probably okay with that proposal. We still feel that this side is probably better on the south side. With Fourth being so wide, it would feel kind of disjointed putting it over there. The county had been very supportive of also this location. Just a reminder, this is county property right here on this lot, and they have been very supportive of that. We're talking 2 to 3 poles, so not meant for large scale events.
Would it still handle like the farmer's market then? Would be good there?
It would just make that better. And we want that to be a really nice restaurant. I've shown you all the square on the next page. Probably looking at $7 to $10 million to do the square in this area to redo some of this. Well, if we're able to get 4th Avenue done, that'll be a huge thing. 4th Avenue does include the $2.5+ million drainage infrastructure that's in the OPCC's opinion of probable construction cost in our plan. That would address a lot of the drainage issues that we're dealing with, and so that would hopefully be able to carry that burden on through and to be less costly down the road on 4th Avenue. One of the other things that we've talked quite a bit about is on the playground. Not a huge fan of where they've designed it. Megan, will you go back up to that other page? It's right there. There it is. That's technically right next to the railroad tracks. It's actually across an existing alley. I'm not a huge fan of that location. I think we're taking some thoughts on possibly getting it closer to the downtown square. The planner's goal on that was to draw people across the railroad tracks when they see all that and they see the dog park. I'm not sure if that location's great. It's still up in the air. We have thought about some other locations. We've talked about possibly tying a small park by the library, close to that parking lot in that vicinity. Around that area, we have a significant student population that goes to that area. We've talked about the EDC lot that they bought behind Paul Blake's building. That lot could serve both downtown and maybe even the community center when events were there as well, because there is some mention of that in here. So we are definitely looking at that. We're not anywhere ready to do anything on that. We would like, once we've kind of had some more dialogue with the commission and looked at this a little further on the playground, we would like to apply eventually one day for a Texas Parks and Wildlife grant if we do it. The only condition on that is I think it's 50-50 match, and that right, 50-50. It has to be a designated park. It can't just be city-owned property. So just wanted to give y'all some updates on the downtown stuff. We're really trying to move some of this forward. I have been very happy with the amount of outside funding we've been able to acquire. Chris is a big player in some of these on the MPO, trying to get these, and so we've been very, very happy with what we've done. And so we've had a very good relationship with TxDOT through this as well. Chris, do you have anything to add on the construction and engineering side?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, TxDOT will be a critical partner through all this as far as MPO projects go. So, as Joe said, they've been great to work with. No, that's not the case across the state everywhere. So, we're pretty fortunate here.
Does anybody have any questions on these? Just want to give everybody an update.
Thanks, Joe. Takes us to item number 9, legislative update provided by staff. John?
Well, Joe asked us to give you all an update, and so we're here to do that, and we kind of split up the responsibilities by the areas, our departments. As you well know, the legislature met this summer, and then they closed, and then they met again, and they're going to be meeting again in some additional sessions. Still talking about lots of different things, but what we're going to talk about tonight with these folks are the things that that passed this summer, that became laws at this point in time, bills that passed. And so tonight we get Steve Brush has volunteered to step forward and provide us the first update from public safety. And this is a moment that most of us have eagerly anticipated. So Steve, would you take it away?
Thanks. John treats me this way every day. I just want that on the record. Every day, John treats me this way. So I just picked out a few bills that there's lots of public safety bills, obviously, that pass every year. There were a lot filed and a lot failed and a lot passed, but there's always lots of public safety bills, and a lot of those are laws that will affect police departments and law enforcement officers that I didn't bring up because it's long and drawn out and not that interesting. But just so you know that after each legislative session, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement does require every police officer to attend a legislative update class, and that's when they get updated on all those little laws that change different crimes and Code of Criminal Procedure and Transportation Code and all those kind of things. So Captain Matt Coggins teaches that. He's licensed to teach that, and he's got the update for that. He got that earlier this week. And so they're preparing to get that started. So that should be rolling out in the next month, and we'll start getting all the officers updated. What I brought for y'all was just a few that I thought would be of interest for y'all. The first one is House Bill 33. That's that's titled the Uvalde Strong Act. That's in reference to the school shooting in Uvalde. And that's a big bill with lots of stuff in it. It makes changes to the education code, the government code, occupations code, and the local government code. Still trying to digest some of that. It's a lot to take in. I keep rereading and picking up on different stuff. So it's a lot to take in. Just some of the highlights is it requires a breaching tool and a ballistic shield for every school campus. I feel like we meet that, except for maybe the two schools that didn't have an SRO the past year. So we'll have to, that'll be an additional purchase for this year, but we're pretty close to meeting that. There's a reporting requirement for active attack incidents that'll if as many of you saw after Uvalde, the Alert and the Department of Justice and the Texas Department of Public Safety all published reports on that attack and that shooting and the response and all that. This is a similar deal, but it's going to require reporting from the agency that responded. It answers a bunch of questions, and then it analyzes a bunch of stuff, and then it's published and reviewed by different people. It also, a big requirement is the requirement of appointment of a public information officer. And this not a huge deal for us. We have Captain Coggins, who's the designated public information officer for the police department, and he works closely with Megan, who's the communications director for the city, and they work through all the releases and that kind of stuff together. So it shouldn't be a big deal for us, other than maybe some additional training. They both have gone through different ICS and NIMS training through FEMA, but this requires some Texas Department of Emergency Management training. So there'll be a little bit more to do there. There's a requirement for tabletop exercises on 1 year and a live exercise on the next year, and vice versa. It flips back and forth. So those will be things that'll have to be implemented and planned on. I think the sheriff is responsible for that. So Chris Forbes is already working hard on that to get that kind of set up. It requires a mutual aid agreement between the Texas Department of Public Safety and local law enforcement agencies. We don't currently have one of those, so We'll kind of see what starts to roll out on that. I suspect the state will roll out a standard one, and we'll have Chuck look at that and see what we want to add or take away from that. That'll probably be a process that y'all will have to be involved in. There's a mental health resources plan for first responders that are involved in a critical incident. And that plan will be developed by Texas Department of Emergency Management, the Texas Health and Human Services, and Texas Department of State Health Sciences, something like that. My bad. I think I screwed that all up. Y'all expected at least one screw up out of this talk, right? Anyway, they'll be developing that plan, and we'll kind of see how that affects us or what that requires from us. In addition to the requirement for a ballistic shield and a breaching tool at each school, under the occupations code and in this same bill, it also requires one for every officer that's on duty on regular patrol. So that'll be another addition where we'll just add more equipment. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now how many we have in each of our cars. We do have some in most of our patrol cars, but I don't know if we have them in all of our patrol cars at this point. And then the last is it requires each agency to have an active attack policy, and we have that. We've had that for many years as an accredited law enforcement agency. That's a requirement that shouldn't affect a big change for us. The next one I brought to you was Senate Bill 3. That's the consumable hemp. That was vetoed by the governor. I'm a little confused on where we stand on that now, but it's back in, but I don't know where it stands as far as everything going on in Austin. Senate Bill 36 requires the Texas Department of Public Safety to create a Homeland Security Division, which that's going to mostly deal with border security and critical infrastructure. So really, I don't feel like that's going to affect the city from what I've read of it a great deal, except for the critical infrastructure part. And a big part of that, I think, will be part of, we will need to be part of working groups and sharing intelligence and information. This past week, I think it was this week or last week, Chris Enriquez and I attended a critical infrastructure working group that's facilitated by Homeland Security and the FBI. So we may be, we should be fine with Senate Bill 36 and the creation of that division. We don't know what Texas DPS might make changes to, but we should be fine with that. The next two I combined is Senate Bill 761 and Senate Bill 1120, which they're involved with crime victims' rights, and those aren't going to be huge changes for us, and that'll be easy to implement for what we don't have in place. Senate Bill 761 has different elements for courts, prosecutors, and law enforcement. One of the things that it puts in the bill is that the victim of a sexual assault has a right to an advocate during a sexual assault nurse examiner exam. That's SANE. And during those SANE exams, we've had advocates at those exams for years. So that's kind of an after deal. But it does, a change for us will be the right to an advocate and or an attorney during law enforcement interviews. Because of the trauma involved in a sexual assault, we usually wait for several days to interview the victim. And so that'll be a change for us because we'll need to coordinate with an advocate or an attorney, whatever the victim wants to meet us where we interview them at and talk to that. So that'll be a little bit of a change for us. Senate Bill 1120 has elements also for the courts, prosecutors, and law enforcement. And this just kind of broadens the rights of domestic violence. It actually adds some offenses that weren't necessarily included in crime victims' rights packages or the crime victims' rights laws. It adds stalking and offenses related to the violation of bond conditions. That was a change, I think, in the last legislative session where when a domestic violence suspect bonds out of jail, then they set bonds in that bonding process, or they set conditions in the bonding process where the the suspect's not allowed to contact the victim or go to the house or different things like that. And before the passage of that bond conditions into the law, or that change in the law, we didn't really have any recourse if they violated the bond conditions. But now we have a recourse, and so that just kind of brings the violation of bond conditions into the crime victims' rights element of that too, where we can refer them to a crime victims advocate at the district attorney's office to help them with those services. And the last one I brought was Senate Bill 1164. And y'all probably don't concern yourselves too much with emergency detentions. Emergency detentions refer to mental health detentions. That's all it refers to. It's not when we detain somebody on the street or anything like that. That's for when we detain somebody because we feel like they need mental health services, and we take them to the hospital and we sign an application for emergency detention where they're not free to leave and they have to visit with a psychiatrist or a psychologist for up to 72 hours to kind of get them on a good path. So this amends the health and safety code. There's a few different requirements that are added. And this is a good thing because a lot of times we'll get to a point where somebody's really having a mental health crisis, but maybe they're not super dangerous. And so the addition here is that if they're in a crisis and we can show how that could put them in danger, then it gives us a little more teeth to act with on an emergency detention. It makes some changes to the application for the emergency detention, and that's especially in the area of persons 17 years of age or younger. Unfortunately, sometimes juveniles have to be taken in on an emergency detention and get some mental health help, and that just it just adds some information to the application to kind of help move that process along. Lastly, for years and years since I've been in law enforcement anyway, when you do an emergency detention and transport the patient to a facility, it's always been quite the lengthy process. In my old Amarillo PD days, it was generally about a 4-hour process by the time you got to the emergency room and medically cleared, and then talked to a counselor to decide if they were going to keep the person or not keep the person and do the evaluation and all that. So this bill will change that, where once the facility wherever we take them has accepted the person, then we don't have to stay with them. And that's for medical treatment or medical evaluation, and it specifically says in the bill to wait while to see if their insurance is going to cover it. Unfortunately, that's a big deal with mental health is having insurance to pay for it. So that's just a big win for us, especially as a department with limited number of personnel that gets our officers back on the street quicker and back to Canyon, Texas, where they can get back in service. So if there's any questions I can answer, I'll be happy to. I may not know the right answer. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Next, we have Bo and Joel are going to give us some information on purchasing, property, sales tax, just all the taxation and those kind of things that have happened over the term.
These are the two most significant pieces of legislation that affect finance. I'm going to speak to two of these, and Bo's going to speak to another one that involves procurement. There is one provision, House Bill 9, that pertains to personal property tax. This will provide for the exemption of up to $125,000 of income producing tangible personal property. And because this is changing in property tax, it requires an amendment to the state constitution. And so therefore this will be on the ballot for November 4th election. If it's passed by voters at that election, this bill would result in probably, I'm talking to Jeffrey Dagley, the chief appraiser at Pratt. He said there's still a lot of nuances to be figured out on how this applies, but it could result in approximately 18 million reduction for us, the city of Canyon, in appraised taxable value. It was promoted as an economic stimulus for businesses, and it applies to property like inventory, machinery, equipment that's used in a business to generate income. At this time, it's unclear how this is going to affect our tax rate calculation, or if it will affect our tax rate calculation. But from what I've read on it, it generally will result in a benefit for businesses, but it's going to be more of a shifting of tax burden. It'll shift it from the businesses and it'll shift it to the homeowner. So the legislation is, again, required to have that constitutional amendment before it will actually go into effect.
Joe, when you say shifting, what does that mean? You know me.
It means we still have to have the same amount of revenue. And so a business is going to pay tax of less than 100 on 125,000 less of its value. So therefore it's going to shift that burden to the homeowner to pay that. So it will be like an overall reduction because of the way we calculate the tax rate, because we're limited on how far we can increase that rate, as Bo's explained multiple times recently. But more likely than not, it's going to shift. And so as you're thinking about that, it starts to make sense, because last year homeowners were given a benefit, not cents from entity to entity, but at least of total property taxes. Last year, schools, the exemption or the homestead exemption increased to 100,000 for all taxpayers, all homeowners. And so that really shifted it to the businesses, because businesses didn't get that homestead exemption. This kind of equalizes that. I think that was the motivation for this, to do something to benefit businesses. The other semi-significant, it really doesn't affect us, but Senate Bill 1851, it now requires annual audits of a city's annual financial statements. The city already does this. It's done it for a long time. But rather than it being a topic or a decision to be made by the local government, it's now being semi-mandated by the state. And I say semi because they're not actually requiring you to have an audit, but you're highly incentivized to have an audit. If you do not have the audit and you don't have that result of the audit opinion on the financial statements filed with the city secretary by the 180th day after the fiscal year end, you're limited to just the no new revenue tax rate. You can't go any higher than that. So as we saw tonight, that would have lowered our tax for operations by over $1 million. So it's a significant incentive to have the financial audit done and to get it filed timely with the city secretary. Right now, our cost, the city's cost for having an annual audit is around $30,000. This is something, again, we've done for years and years. This will likely have a significant impact on some other communities around the state. That's all I have. Bo's going to speak to procurement issues.
All right, Chapter 252 of the Local Government Code sets the competitive requirements for municipal purchases of goods and services. This chapter regulates the competitive sealed proposals that are required and how they are to be administered. As of September 1st of this year, Senate Bill 1173 will increase the dollar amount requirement for competitive sealed proposals for procurement from $50,000 to $100,000. Most common purchases that the City of Canyon makes that fall within this $50,000 to $100,000 range are for vehicles and equipment. Some recent examples, police cruisers cost a little over $80,000 each. We recently purchased 2 pickup trucks that cost the city $54,146 net of the trade-in. We had a mini excavator for $56,800. 3 Kubota utility vehicles for the golf course of $54,000, and a vacuum excavator for $60,000. with this change in this regulation, these would no longer be required to be bid or require a cooperative agreement. This bill would also increase the range for the requirement that a city must contact at least 2 historically underutilized businesses or hub for purchases from $3,000 and $50,000. That range would be extended from $3,000 to $100,000. But I will say that there are currently 6 vendors in Randall County that have an active hub status, according to the state comptroller's directory. Now, these are state requirements. The city commission, the city staff are still able to set additional requirements that do not supersede the states. Now is a great opportunity for the staff to finalize and implement a formal purchasing policy that will better foster security, transparency, and competitive value-based decision-making without further delaying delivery of necessary goods and services.
Does the commission have any thoughts on the threshold increasing? So obviously we've been bringing vehicles to you. That's the biggest one. Vehicle purchases has been bringing to it. This could, I mean, it's will expedite things. We only meet twice a month. And so Bo's got to go through quite a bit of paperwork. He's got to get all the POs. He's got to get all that stuff. That takes probably 2-3 weeks sometimes.
Correct.
How long does it take for a police car?
To prepare the order or from delivery?
Prepare the order. So if Steve wanted to get a new police unit,
we typically ask for 3 quotes. Just to get those quotes from the vendors could take 2 to 3 weeks. We analyze the best value of those quotes, file the proper paperwork. So another 1 to 2 weeks after that before we actually make the commitment to purchase, and they begin preparing that vehicle.
it's just a time saver. So. Anybody have any major heartburns on that? If not, I'll have Bo bring a purchasing policy back to you guys, but we wanted to see if y'all had any comments on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Hector is out, and I don't want to steal his thunder, so we'll let him come again. So this is the section you all been waiting on, the administration section. So I'll share that with you very briefly. I'll be as brief as I can. Cyber training. You all do training already. City staff does training already. That's been increased. It establishes a new state agency to enhance cyber security for public entities. So the state is going to form a group to help us do that, an agency to help us do that. And Texas Cyber Command will be responsible for providing leadership, guidance, and tools to improve cybersecurity defenses, facilitate workforce development, and monitor cyber threats. It requires each elected or appointed official and employees of local governments entities who have access to the entity's information resource or information resource technologies to annually complete a state-certified cybersecurity training program. So it increases what we're going to have to do. The annual training that you do could be increasing. So that's what that is. Requires a local government entity to verify and report on the entity's compliance with this. So we have to report that you took the training and that we took the training also. TCC accordingly will periodically audit such compliance, allows government entity or governing bodies designee to deny any employee or official access to the entity's information resources or information resource technologies who do not complete the annual training. So in other words, if I don't complete the training, do I have to work on the computer any longer?
No, you had a computer. Oh,
okay, thank you. But yeah, it states that we could take that, and if you can't do your job, you can't do your job. So if you don't follow up with the training, then there could be positions lost, and it states that you all will be required to do that training, and we have to report on that. House Bill 3512, artificial intelligence training. Local government employees and elected and appointed officials who have access to local government computer systems or databases and use a computer to perform at least 25% of their employees or officials' required duties must complete a certified artificial intelligence training program. So if you're on there, if you're using that computer 25% of the time, then you'll be required. as an elected official and also as an employee. Department of Information Resources, in consultation with Cybersecurity Council and interested persons, shall, among other things, annually certify at least 5 AI training programs for the state and local employees to follow. So the state's going to be setting up those programs, pushing those down to us, and then we'll be pushing those out to our employees, ensuring that they do that. To apply, this is an interesting one, to apply for a criminal justice related state grant, which would be our JAG grant, I guess, for police officers.
Yes. Yes.
And fire officers. A local government must submit with the grant application a written certification of the local government's compliance with certified AL training. So if we're not doing that, then there'd be grants that we wouldn't be eligible to apply for. Senate Bill 924, cable and video services. For the last month, Bo's been coming to us and explaining that we have been losing franchise fees. This is associated with that. There was a push to include streaming services.
There's still litigation going on.
As we lose cable services, to include that. We also know we're losing phone lines, right? Those kind of things, or everything is streaming. So this clarifies that video streaming services and satellite services that do not use or access a public right-of-way will not be subject to the same right-of-way fees as traditional cable providers. So if they're not in the ground, what this is stating is that they don't have to pay that franchise fee. It prevents municipalities from applying cable franchise fees to streaming and satellite services that do not utilize right-of-way. Franchise fees decrease. The negative effect is franchise fees decrease as with the use of streaming services. And there were already, I believe, communities around the state that had figured some of that out and were already starting to come up with fees for streaming services. And so the legislature weighed in on that and said, no, that's not going to happen. And as Joe said,
they're still in lawsuit on it.
That's a battle that will continue. AI, artificial intelligence, relates to the regulation and use of AI systems and the management of data by government entities, requires that each state agency and local government that deploys or uses an artificial intelligence system that the public directly accesses or that is controlling factor in any decision that a material, legal, or similarly significant event on the provisions, denial, or considerations of persons' access to government services include a standardized notice on related applications, internet websites, and public computer systems. I suppose that would affect Amarillo, where they have their AI on their webpage. If you go to the Amarillo webpage, you will be waited on by Emma is there. She is there waiting to answer your questions and point you in the right directions. In this case, they'll have to provide some information from the state that tells you that Emma is not a person and that Emma is AI and what Emma is doing.
And Sean and I have spoken about this already. As of right now, we don't have any public-facing AI that the State of Canyon is using. That would be even something like a chatbot that pops up on our website or anything like that. As of right now, we do not offer any of those services.
And I think, Bo, it would come into play with you if a city decided that they wanted to use AI in their purchasing decisions.
That's correct.
And there are many ways that could be used, but there would be some notification that we'd have to tell people that we're doing that. Is what that boils down to. We really don't know what all that means yet. As we all know, we're trying to figure that out. But the state is trying to get ahead of that for misuse to inhibit misuse there. Let's see. Cities will likely experience an intermittent fiscal impact as they are required to adopt and implement AI ethics, risk management. As we have to adopt those things, if we follow those things, there could be some costs there if we use those. So nothing that we feel right now, but all of those things are things we could feel in the future. any questions on any of those? And Joe, that's all we have this time, and we'll have, the next meeting, we'll have 4 or 5 more folks that'll present their information.
Thanks, John.
All right. Well, thank you all for the updates. That now takes us to item number 10, executive session pursuant to 551.071, consultation with attorney, and 551.074 for personnel matters, annual review for city engineer. With that, I have 6:09, and we will adjourn into exec session.